A few months back, we got word that Marvel Comics were releasing a Marvel Voices Iceman series. And there was something about it, specifically the cover, that really kind of creeped me out. I was going to talk about it at the time, but it felt like I had covered that subject here on the channel enough at that point, so I decided to skip it. But the image of this character Iceman and what Luciano Vecchio is doing with the character definitely creeped me out severely. This week's X-Men Monday on Adventures in Poor Taste had an interview with Luciano Vecchio, the artist and writer of the series, and it really explains so much, and it makes everything about this image even worse than it initially appeared. Obviously, being a Marvel Voices series, it's going to focus in on the gay aspects of Iceman, the fact that he's gay, and it's going to expound upon that point. The fact that this character appears to be 10 years old, and if we're being generous, we might want to say that maybe Bobby Drake Iceman looks like he's 12 here, I think is very, very, very creepy, and certainly by design from the artist himself, Luciano Vecchio, the editor, Sarah Brunstad, and Marvel Comics themselves. We've been seeing a weird trend where when a character comes out as being LGBTQ representative, whether they're gay, lesbian, or bisexual, all of a sudden the appearance of the character gets de-aged dramatically. Bobby Drake has been in Marvel Comics for about 60 years now, been very well established. Vecchio does talk about how he doesn't like the spiky nature of the look of Iceman. Of course, the original Iceman was illustrated by Jack Kirby. There were no spikes on the character, but the character is clearly an adult all the way back in the 1960s and has been shown to be an adult pretty much the entire time he's been in Marvel Comics, except for when Brian Michael Bendis brought back the, I guess, kid versions of the original X-Men team so the new X-Men could learn from him. And that's when we got the Jean Grey using her mutant ability essentially to brainwash Bobby Drake into thinking he was gay storyline, and it came out of there. And I think it is very, very creepy to age him down to like 10 years old for a comic book that is specifically intended by design to discuss the character's sexuality. This has been ongoing in all of entertainment, but we're certainly seeing it in comic books. Another one of the biggest examples is what DC Comics are doing with Tim Drake, a character established to be in his early to mid-20s this entire time. And all of a sudden, when you look at the coming out issue with Tim Drake, when he comes out and he asks Bernard on a date and all that kind of stuff, all of a sudden he looks like he's 14. He actually looks like he's younger than Damian Wayne, who was about 10 years younger than Tim Drake. It's absolutely creepy, and by design on the part of Marvel and DC Comics, it's really by design by all of entertainment. I'm sure you've noticed this as well as I have, the way that Disney, Netflix, and all these other big entertainment conglomerates are really pushing a lot of LGBTQ sexual orientation material into shows designed for little bitty kids. I'm talking 5-year-olds. It's become very disturbing, and it makes you question, how much longer can I keep supporting Disney? How much longer can I keep supporting Netflix? Because when you have Netflix, you can make a kid's account, and you essentially believe that Netflix is protecting your kids from the material that they shouldn't be watching. But me personally, I use my kid's account, and I found that material there waiting for them to discover, and it's very creepy. It's by design, and it's on purpose. This illustration of Iceman is meant to appeal to children. There's no way you can look at this and say, no, that's not really supposed to be a kid-friendly version of Iceman. This version of Iceman isn't supposed to look like he's 10 years old. He's absolutely supposed to look like he's 10 years old. And then the answers in this interview by Luciano Vecchio make everything worse. First question, Iceman's love life receives a lot of attention in the series. Of Bobby's recent love interest, who do you personally prefer? This is what Luciano Vecchio had to say. Of the two that we focus on in this series, I always wanted to see more of Romeo and get to know him better since he got so little page time before. I have a thing for that one that got away stories, charm and empath power sets. And I started understanding Christian and liking him more and more as I wrote about him and his more intimate dynamic with Bobby. So I ended up honestly loving both of them for different reasons. Do you, as a parent or just maybe somebody with 2 functioning brain cells, really think it's appropriate for a comic book essentially aimed at maybe 7 or 8-year-olds to talk about the one that got away when it comes to Bobby Drake and his 2 boyfriends over time? I think that's hugely inappropriate and not something I want to see Marvel Comics exploring with my children or other people's children or any children whatsoever. There is a time and a place for stories like this. A lot of times it's actually not in superhero comics. It's one of the things I really don't understand. They want to make the superhero genre into the LGBTQ romance drama, which is really strange because there's already that genre within comic books. It's got its shelf space, and people go and read it for that. If you were reading one of these LGBTQ romance, coming of age dramas. And all of a sudden, 3 pages into the story, the hero, as he's about to kiss the other boy for the first time, flew off into space and just started fighting aliens for 15 pages and was trying to save the universe. You might say, where the fuck did this come from? And that's what it feels like most of the time when they try to shove this LGBTQ propaganda within the superhero genre. It's never placed in with any nuance because you can tell it's the primary focus of the story rather than the actual superheroics and the hero's journey that's supposed to be the bread and butter of superhero comics. I'm sure a lot of people would like to know about the more intimate dynamics of Bobby Drake and Christian's relationship, but I sure as hell know it's not appropriate to aim and really promote towards preteen kids. Luciano Vecchio definitely expands upon this in some later questions. Did you have a lot of back reading for this Iceman series? If so, what were some of your favorite stories you revisited? This is what the writer said. I did. I reread a lot. Of course, the previous volume written by Sina Grace is a favorite and a roadmap of sorts. I started there and then jumped to key points across Bobby's history, from his first appearance to the recent Marauders. And as I started to see the matrix of his life, my story began to emerge from it. Sina Grace's Iceman is one of the worst written comic books in modern history. Nobody read it. It fell like a rock, and it's basically despised by all comic book readers. Basically across the board. Maybe there's 3 comic book readers out there besides Luciano Vecchio and Sina Grace that actually think it's a good story. It is absolutely whole cloth despised by comic book readers, yet this is the foundation that Luciano Vecchio is using for the story. And you would think an editor like Sarah Brunstad, who hired Luciano Vecchio to do this story, would say, you know what? This failed miserably. In fact, Sina Grace got kicked out of Marvel Comics. Maybe this isn't the way to go with the character of Iceman. It didn't work before, and it's certainly not going to work now. But for some reason, when it comes to these LGBTQ like representative characters, failure does not exist. It doesn't matter how bad you wrote it. It doesn't matter how it was received. As long as you put it out there, it got a headline or two. It doesn't matter if it made money. We will go back and revisit it over and over and over. And I guess establish a new normal. And that way we don't have to say Sina Grace's Iceman was a terrible flop because everything after it flopped too. So really, it just performed normally in comparison to everything else. And revisiting the Marauder stuff. Oh my goodness, what a terrible interpretation of Bobby Drake in Marauders. I read that damn thing for about a year, and the only thing Bobby Drake ever did in that comic book was let you know that he was gay. You would have 24 pages of story, and you would have 3 panels in which Bobby Drake would show up, he would kiss a boy, and then he would disappear and never do anything ever again. I don't think making Bobby Drake a gay character made sense with the history of the character or any of that stuff. But if you're going to do it, let's at least do it right and try to highlight the hero that Bobby Drake is. But that's not the point anymore. He's just the gay Iceman now. And that's one of the big problems when Marvel and DC shove this stuff onto their heroes. They lose all sense of history and any other characteristic that defined the character beforehand. And that's why these things always flop over and over and over. It's happening with Superman. It's happening with Robin. And it certainly happened for a long time with Bobby Drake. And this series isn't going to help. Next question. Iceman is one of those X-Men characters who has endless potential, both power-wise and story-wise. How do you hope readers view Bobby Drake after reading your series? This is what Mr. Vecchio had to say. With love, respect, admiration, and identification. As the full-grown hero and iconic brand he is on his own. Not shocking that identification is one of the priorities of this series, considering it appears to be a 10-year-old version of Bobby Drake, and it's all about his sexual orientation and coming out to his dad and people being mean to him and how many times he's fallen in love at such a young age. The main point of this story is to appeal to children, hopefully fool the parents, and then they're going to try to influence your child by introducing them to these ideas that they probably don't know, and if they have been introduced by their parents in a way that is appropriate for the age of the child. But they don't like that. That's not good enough. If you're the parent and you want to do what's right for your kid, that's not good enough. You need to do it on my schedule. I don't think you're being progressive enough. You need to indoctrinate your children into LGBTQ culture, and if you don't, I will. That is the main point of what this Iceman story is, and it's despicable. It's creepy that they're targeting kids at such a young age. Last question from AIPT. How did the opportunity to explore Iceman's life as a solo hero in an Infinity comic series come about? Was this something you pitched or you were approached by the X-Men office? We know that he didn't pitch it. No one does to the X-Men. They only pitch stories to the creators. Here's the proof in the pudding. Luciano says, I got the offer. Even if I'm primarily an artist, I expressed to my editors my interest in writing too and showed my creator-owned work as a writer-artist. I got my first Marvel writing credits in Marvel Voices #1 and Marvel Voices Pride #1 in short stories about LGBT plus representation in the Marvel universe and in the superhero genre, which is my favorite field to work in. Sarah Brunstad offered me the chance to write and draw an actual mini. It took me by surprise, and I almost said no out of insecurity. Thankfully, I shook it off and started working full gear on a pitch that became the story that you see now. Ding, 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 we have a winner. Right there from the words of Luciano Vecchio. He doesn't care about Marvel Comics heroes. He does not care about the superhero genre. He only cares about representation, LGBTQ representation within these genres. He wants to infiltrate it. He wants to put these ideas in there so we can influence people. Aging Iceman down is by design. I think it's very creepy that a grown man, a grown artist, decided he needed to tell a story about Iceman, about his sexuality and his awakening and the lovers in his life. And he decided he needed to age down the character to look like he was 10 years old. How fucking creepy is that? And what is wrong with Sarah Brunstad, the editor in charge of this? She knows that Luciano Vecchio only cares about LGBTQ representation within Marvel Comics. It makes sense that you would hire him for the Marvel Voices series. But to let him age the character down and make him look like a prepubescent child is absolutely creepy. I've seen the other images, and yes, in one of them, it appears that one of the lovers of Bobby Drake has a beard. So apparently he gets aged up, but the characters look like they're 10 years old with a beard. You can tell by the image itself and the words from Luciano Vecchio that he and Sarah Brunstad, it was their intent to use this Iceman Marvel Voices series as a vehicle to influence people, specifically young people with the design of the character. I think it's reprehensible. I'm not going to use the G word, but I imagine I'm going to see it a lot in the comment section. I don't know if they're trying to do that, but it sure feels like it, doesn't it? This isn't just a Marvel Comics problem. This isn't just a DC Comics problem. It's not just a comic books problem. This is all of entertainment. It's getting worse and worse as the months go by. If you need more examples, I will go to DC Comics. Tim Drake got the Iceman treatment. He can never read anything but the gay Robin now. And of course, they had to age the character down significantly. This is creepy. What Marvel is doing was creepy. What everybody's doing, trying to influence children with LGBTQ culture, is very creepy. And it's really reprehensible.